Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Edina. I'm Sam Thompson and I'm proud to be your 66th president. We're coming to you live from the Edina Country Club and also on Zoom. Today we have 35 people pre-registered for live and about 22 on Zoom. Saturday, October 24th is World Polio Day. And World Polio Day was established by Rotary International to commemorate the birth of Jonas Salk, who led the first team to develop the vaccine for polio. On this day, the global health experts and partners share the progress on the road to eradication. Polio has caused paralysis and death for much of human history. The polio virus invades the nervous system and can cause total paralysis in a matter of hours. Polio can strike at any age, and it mainly strikes children under the age of 5, and it's incurable, but completely vaccine preventable. In 1894, the first major documented polio outbreak in the United States was in Vermont, where there were 18 deaths and 132 permanent paralysis. At its peak in the 1940s and 50s, polio would paralyze or kill 500,000 people worldwide per year. Then in the early 1950s, Salk's team produced the first vaccine. And in 1985, Rotary launched Polio Plus program. And this was the first initiative to tackle the global eradication through mass vaccination of the children. Rotary has contributed more than $1.3 billion and countless volunteer hours to immunize more than 2.5 billion children in 122 countries. In 1988, the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, or the GPEI, was formed, and this is a public and private partnership that includes Rotary, the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many governments of the world. Rotary's focus is advocacy, fundraising, volunteer recruitment, and awareness building. With funding from Rotary members, Rotary has issued more than $50 million in Polio Plus grants in just this past June. And these grants supported polio eradication in Afghanistan and Pakistan, which are the last two countries remaining where there is polio. Currently, there are 129 people in the world with polio, 77 from Pakistan and 52 from Afghanistan. Our 16-district zone is the 5th highest in the world for polio giving. Even with the challenge of COVID today, where concerns with close contact between the vaccinators, the infants, and their families, our mission must continue. So that grant in June that Rotary approved, that provided over 19,000 vehicles that were hired for frontline workers in Afghanistan. It also provided 90 million doses of oral polio vaccine and over 2,500 community health workers in Pakistan. Now more than ever, the support of all Rotary members is needed to help win the fight for a polio-free world. In October 24th, just 2 days away on Saturday, our district is celebrating Polio Day, and we're putting on the Amazing Race, our district is. And it's a fun event. It's a scavenger hunt. You can go as teams of 2, goes from 9 to 10, and they're using Zoom, and it's a matter of you need to find 10 things. You get a list, you need to find 10 things. And the winning team gets a Paul Harris Fellows Award for that. You can register on the Rotary website, which is rotary5950.org, and it's only 10 cents to register, which is what it costs to vaccinate a child. And if you want to pay more, you certainly can. Okay, now our member update. Mary Swendsen's son, Dan, was just recently engaged to Malia. And Mary feels very fortunate that Malia has the same enthusiasm for life as Dan does, which is great. And our member, Gordy Lewis, hopefully Gordy, you're on Zoom today, you normally are. He asked Malia at the recent Christmas party, he asked her where her diamond was. And Dan wanted Gordy to know that he has delivered. And in the news, we had our leadership series on Tuesday night this week, and it was a big hit. We had 29 people, so we're getting a great response with it. Shelley Loberg, our secretary, talked on communications. She did a great job. Rob Breeding was the host, as he always is, and he always does a great job too. So it was a great success. Hopefully many of you can join us again. It's the third Tuesday of every month. Okay, and we have some birthdays this next week. We have 3 birthdays coming up, so a happy birthday to those of you. And assisting off podium, we have our greeter, Brad Hepp. Zoom greeter, Katie Campbell. Front desk is Fred Sylvester helping Becky. Photographer, Jennifer Bennerotte, moving around the room. And AV support, Ryan Wilson. And just a reminder to please put your mask back on once you're done eating for the safety of other members. And now I'd like to call up Sutton McGraw for the invocation pledge in the 4-way test.
Hi guys, good afternoon. Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather here today at our weekly Rotary meeting, we ask you to look over each and every one of us. In a year that has thrown us all great challenges, we ask you to help guide us and give us strength to come together. In a year that has shown us how divided we are, we ask you to give us the spirit of unity. Help us each listen politely as others share their points of view. Help us work as a united team in combining ideas for a great outcome. Help us work as a whole so our efforts become a positive force of action. Let us hope that there are better things ahead. Hope that we can get through even the toughest of times. Please help us know that we are stronger than any challenge that comes our way, and that we are on the path that will help us and our fellow Rotarians to achieve greatness. Let's celebrate our individual differences and yet know that our fellow Rotarians unite to make the world a better place by placing service above self. I'm grateful for all of you who are present here today and those who join us via Zoom. Have a wonderful rest of your week. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Is it beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. We have a few guests here today. Sam Thompson has 2 guests, Gay and Bill Clapp.
Yes, if they want to stand up. Gay and Bill Clapp, they're my neighbors. We live in the condo together in downtown Minneapolis. And Gay is on the board of the League of Women Voters, and she helped get the speaker for today. So thank you so much.
Say, Gay, can we talk about the Wi-Fi at your building? We had a little issue Wednesday morning about 8:43, and you want to talk about that, Sam?
You're suffering with it too, right?
So we lost Sam during the meeting, but we gained Michael, so he did a great job. Then Josh Sprague has a guest, Molly.
It's Sprague.
It's not what it says here. It says,
Please introduce yourself. I met Molly at the Edina car show. She was a participant in her Corvette. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Molly.
You mean from a job perspective?
Yep.
I'm a vice president with Viacom CBS, so I've worked there for 14 years now, and was lucky enough to meet Josh. I inherited my dad's classic Corvette, and so because I have an 11-year-old son, he thinks the car is pretty cool, and so I said, we're gonna enter a car show this year, buddy. And so we did that together and had a great time and met some great people and that's why I'm here today.
Good. Welcome.
I was just teasing you. It says Sprague, so that's great. Yeah, right, sure. Susan Stiles has a guest, Carlin Petaducci.
This is Carlin, and Rob Redding brought him as a guest, I think about a month ago, then introduced me to Carlin. Carlin and I connected, and I said, why don't you come back so you can tell them a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here today. So my name is Colin Pediachi. I'm an attorney here at Edina. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. And I do mostly transactional work, so I do mostly business and estate planning. So I've been able to connect with some members here in Edina and just see some familiar faces. So I decided to connect with the Rotary and just keep, staying connected here. So thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
And you might as well keep it back there. Jennifer Hendrickson has a guest.
Jen
Yes, so this is Kayla Feeler. She came with Shelley Loberg her first time. We connected again at the chamber breakfast. And she has to come back and visit us. So if you want to tell them a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back. My name is Kayla Beeler. I am actually a Richfield Rotarian, was a Rotarian at the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce when I lived there. Moved to Maui, came back. I currently live I work at Village Shores Senior Living Community in Richfield, and I'm happy to be here.
Welcome.
Maui to Minneapolis, wow. Well, everybody welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, our Rotary year goes from July until June 30th. And Rotary International always gives out awards if clubs are meeting their goals. And this past year, under the leadership of Josh Sprague, our club hit a home run. We did really well. We got, let me get it up here. We got the Platinum Citation Award, Rotary Citation Platinum Award. I can tell you, we have 64 clubs in our district. Only 11 clubs received a citation award. I did not find out how many got the Platinum. The Platinum's the best. There are 3 levels. But I can't imagine all 11 got Platinum. So I want to have Josh come up and receive the award and say a couple things. How about a nice hand for Josh?
Thanks, Sam. First of all, Mark Jessen, happy 65th birthday. You don't look a day over 60, Mark. Thanks for being here with us. Me too. Honestly, I just want to say thank you for the honor of serving this club. It was a great year, and I had an absolutely amazing team. It really was the dream team. The Rotary Citation this last year asked clubs to perform different basically best practices in 3 different areas. The first area was called Take Action. We needed 5 out of 9 awards to achieve the citation, and we got 7. The second one was Unite People. Needed 5 out of 9, we got 5. And then the last one was the Distinction category. Needed 3 out of 4 to get the Platinum designation, and we achieved 3. And some of the notable things that helped us get on the map with the citation was the Edina Rotary Global Scholars Program, something we worked on for almost 3 or 4 years to get that partnership together with the school district. Along with sip and serve events we did in the fall and the spring, and our leadership development series that's now in its 2nd year going strong, and that Bridget and David Ozzie launched. So I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to last year's board team. President-elect was Sam Thompson, and please stand if you hear your name. Treasurer Michael Stanzak, Secretary Joe Hayes, past President John Flynn, Club Service Fred Sylvester, Community Service Grants Kelly Burnett, Projects Lisa Walker, International Service Loberg, Shelley, Public Image Jennifer Hendrickson, Membership Royce Pavelka, Social Renee Harberts, TRF Susan Stiles, who's also here, and Youth Service David Ozzie. Let's give it up for this awesome team, and congratulations. Thank you.
Thanksgiving is just around the corner. You might expect to see Michael Stanzak here inviting you to Thanksgiving basket assembly, but he's passed the turkey leg on to me this year. So, what better way for Rotarians to give thanks and to help other families have a brighter Thanksgiving Day? And so this coming November 25th, we're going to meet. I'm inviting up to 21 families or teams from Noon Rotary and another 9 from Morningside Rotary to come together and assemble the baskets this year. It'll be a little different, of course, because of COVID. We're going to have a couple assembly areas here in the dining room. Families and teams will actually sign up online for a particular designated time in which they'll come between 11:30 and 2 o'clock to put together the baskets and then head out for delivery somewhere in the Twin Cities. There won't be a shared luncheon this year due to COVID, but your service is going to go a long way to making the holidays brighter for a lot of people, and I think also for yourself. So mark your calendars for November 25th. Watch your Rotary emails for the chance to sign up and help, and there are flyers on the tables that have some details. In the meantime, I do want to ask you all, if you can, to begin to donate canned corn and peas and yams and green beans. You can just bring them here to the country club and we'll store them for assembly and delivery day, or be in touch with me to pass along your donations, because I'm happy to arrange to pick them up or arrange for you to drop them off with me. We're going to make 85 baskets so we can use plenty of those things. And finally, I'll be looking for a few good volunteers to show up at 10 o'clock on Assembly Day to help get things set up in the dining room and to welcome and serve our guests. I'll look for 2 greeters, 2 registration helpers, and 4 assembly coaches. So if you'd like to help out on that day, just let me know and we'll make it happen. Thanks, you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Bennerotte, and I am a member of our Local Service Funding or Grants Committee. Some of you might recall that last year we spearheaded a big project and received a district grant for a project at the Sheridan store in Roseville. And that project was the creation of raised garden beds so that they could augment the food that they collect and give to families in need in the metro area with fresh produce. Our hope was to help build those raised garden beds and help plant them in the spring. Because of COVID-19, that was not possible, and even now our volunteer ability is somewhat limited. However, we are looking for a few volunteers for this weekend on Saturday from 10 to noon to help clear out the gardens and winterize them so that they will be ready next spring for planting. We could use 5 to 7 more volunteers. At this point, spouses would also be welcome to participate. No tools or experience is necessary, just wear clothes that you don't mind getting dirty. And please register online or let me or Becky know directly at this point, since it's only 2 days away. But please join us. There are very few opportunities these days for community service. We'd love to have your helping hand. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Susan Johnson. I'm chair of the social committee. And you heard from me last week. You'll probably hear from me again. Well, you are going to hear from me again today. Hopefully you won't have to hear from me again next week. But I'm here today to talk about our next social event. It is flyers on your table. It's an evening Cooks of Crocus Hill, and it's a virtual cooking event. And it's going to be on Thursday, November 12th, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And we'll be instructed on how to cook a delicious Italian meal. And one of the things I did not do such a great job of last week was explaining that the cost of this event is $69, and that gets you a Zoom entry to the cooking class. But whether you have 1 person, 2 people, 4 people, it's $69. And then you do need to provide your own food. The Cooks of Crocus Hill will send out a Zoom link, and they'll also send out kind of a shopping list for you. So the biggest thing with this is we need to have you register and pay for the event. You can do that through Club Runner or the website. And if we don't get 10 people signed up, that will be refunded to you. So we right now have 2 signed up. So please sign up if you're interested. Otherwise, oh, we got 3. All right. There we go. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're ready for our program, and I'll be introducing Doug Johnson, who will be introducing our speaker today. Doug joined our club in 2009 with sponsors John Barnett and Skip Thomas. He has had perfect attendance for 10 years. He was a member of and chaired the Public Image Committee, and also was on the board, of course. And our club received the Award of Excellence for Public Image in District 5950 that year. He's a member of the Local Grants Committee and the International Grants Committee, so he's a big worker. He's chaired the Speakers Committee under Ann Platt and John Flynn, and is currently chairing the 2021-22 Speaker Committee for President-elect Michael Stanczak.
Thank you.
He's lived in Edina since 1984. He has 4 children that graduated from Edina High School. He was a district administrator for Edina Public Schools for 30 plus years. He's currently retired, has 12 grandchildren. He's married to Karen for 48 years, and Doug loves Rotary. Please welcome Doug.
Thank you, Sam. We have another great speaker today, Nick Harper. Nick is the Civic Engagement Director at the League of Women Voters of Minnesota, the whole state. And during this past summer and this fall, Nick is helping local League of Women Voters clubs to provide voter services in collaboration with community partners. And during the winter and spring, looking ahead, he'll be serving as the staff lead for the state advocacy part of the League of Women Voters. His policy interests cover all aspects of political activity and civic engagement, including the legislative process, money in politics, voting rights, redistricting, and other election law. He holds a BA in political science from Gustavus Adolphus. I was wait. I'm saying Olaf, but that's okay. And a JD with Public Service Honors from the University of Iowa College of Law. Oh, no, Iowa's here today. They're all, hello on Zoom. He is also a licensed attorney in Minnesota. This is my favorite part. In his spare time, Nick watches too much Netflix and eats too much cheese. Welcome, Nick Wolf.
All right.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to speak to everyone. It's definitely timely to be talking about our elections. Election day is only a couple weeks away, so definitely now is the time to be talking about it. A little bit about the League of Women Voters of Minnesota. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy. So we, as was talked about just a moment ago, a lot of our work right now is we were registering voters, educating voters on how to vote. This year, obviously, there's been a big push on educating voters on how to vote absentee, especially absentee by mail, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And addressing how voters can feel comfortable voting during the pandemic. So I was asked to talk about voting, our elections, and the pandemic today. I think I left a good amount of time for questions. So I like answering questions from folks, so feel free to think up good questions for me to answer for you folks. So the first thing I want folks to know is that Minnesota has been encouraging vote by mail. A lot of cities have been encouraging people to vote by mail absentee this year. It's been big because it does reduce the risk of transmission of the virus during the pandemic. We've actually had no excuse absentee voting since at least 2014. Before that, we did have excuse-based absentee voting, which means you could vote by mail if you had a reason you couldn't go to the polling place. And we've had that for quite a long time. So Minnesota's pretty experienced in our elections happening absentee by mail. I get the question often is what's the difference between mail voting and absentee voting by mail? There are several jurisdictions in Minnesota that actually have full-on mail balloting. What that means is that anybody who is registered to vote automatically receives a ballot in the mail. So that's limited in Minnesota to jurisdictions that have less than 400 voters in their precinct. in greater Minnesota outside the 7-county metro area. So that's in greater Minnesota, very small rural areas usually. But that's been going on for quite a long time too. So again, we have good experience, long experience in executing our elections by mail. I also get the question, so again, get the question what the difference is between mail balloting and absentee balloting by mail. The difference is simply that you receive your ballot automatically with mail voting. With absentee, you have to request your ballot to be sent to you. That's the only difference. They're similar in every other way. So again, very, very good experience here in Minnesota executing our elections through the mail system. As of October 16th, our updates from the Secretary of State's office comes weekly. But as of the 16th, which is when the last update came, we had, 1.6 million absentee ballots were requested in Minnesota. And then actually almost 1 million, so at this point certainly 1 million, votes were actually accepted and returned. So those votes will be counted, myself included. And compared to the 2016 presidential election, it was about a third or less. So there's a lot of enthusiasm for early voting, absentee voting this year. And we expect that to continue through Election Day. So the mail voting system, the one question I get a lot is how does the mail voting system keep our ballots secure and safe? How do people know, how do I know that my ballot is not going to be tied to my name? And that's actually why there's so many envelopes. That's the other question we get is, why are we getting all these envelopes? I'm very overwhelmed. I don't know which goes first. So we have this handy little graphic that we've designed and as part of our Vote From Home campaign website to explain voters what the process is for those envelopes and we also have a blog post that goes into detail about the purpose of each one. So the first one is your privacy envelope, also called a secrecy envelope or just a ballot envelope. Usually it's tan. That's where you place your actual ballot into. There's no other information on that envelope. The intent is that that envelope can keep your ballot information, your choices on your ballot secret without it being tied to the other information on the other ballots, the other envelopes. The second envelope is your signature envelope that has the information that has who you are, your personal identifying information. So in Minnesota, when you return a absentee ballot or a mail ballot, you have to use personal identifying number. That's either your Minnesota ID number, so a driver's license number, or the last 4 digits of your social security number. So you put that on there and that helps ensure that you are who you say you are. You're not some stranger with somebody else's information, ballot. And then the third ballot, of course, is the return envelope or the mailing envelope. That's the largest one that everything goes into and ensures that everything stays secure during the mailing process. So what they do is they receive those mail envelopes, they open up the mail envelope, they look at the signature envelope, the witness envelope, ensure that all that information is correctly filled out. If it's not for some reason, they actually notify the voter, either by mail if it's more than 5 days from the election. If it's within 5 days of the election, they actually have to call or email the voter. So if something goes wrong, the good news is that you do get notified to get a second chance, essentially, to vote. And then if everything looks okay, they remove the secrecy envelope from the witness envelope and set that aside into a pile. So that once those secrecy envelopes are opened, nobody's individual ballot gets connected to their individual name. So everybody's ballot remains secret. One of the big things I also want to remind folks this year is that we will not have an election night. We will have an election week. A lot of states, including Minnesota, are actually counting their ballots beyond Election Day this year due to the pandemic and the increased time given to voters due to absentee voting by mail for the pandemic. In Minnesota, local election officials can actually start opening ballots and processing ballots before Election Day. This year, they're allowed to do it 2 weeks before Election Day. Usually it's just 1 week. This year it's 2 to give them extra time for the influx of absentee by mail votes. That's when they actually open the return envelopes, look at the signature envelope, and make sure everything looks okay. So they're already starting to do that now in Minnesota because we are 2 weeks away from Election Day, so they are starting to do that already. And they will also count those ballots a week after Election Day, as long as the return envelope, is postmarked by Election Day, on or before Election Day. That gives voters extra time to return their ballot and accounts for any possible delays with USPS, which some of you may have heard there have been some delays through the Postal Service this year. One phenomenon that I like to bring up for folks is that when ballots have been counted after Election Day in other states and other circumstances, there has been a phenomenon called blue shift, which is a lot of those ballots end up being Democratic more than they are Republican. And so the end result of the election looks more Democratic the days after the election than they did on election night. So that's one phenomenon that we've seen in the past, and we might see again this year. Election experts, however, aren't so sure we'll see it this year because the influx of early absentee voting has been primarily Democratic voters. And so we aren't sure whether or not we'll see that blue shift again, or if all the votes are going to come in early and there won't be that shift as much after the election. So we'll see what happens, but the point of that is that what happens on election night is not necessarily the results, and folks will just need to be a little bit patient and wait for the results of all the elections. There will probably be several elections that will be called on election night because the number of absentee ballots remaining are fewer than the difference between the candidates, so there's no way that the other candidate could catch up, so they'll call those. But there may be several elections that they won't call on election night. One question we do get asked a lot is how do I find information about judicial candidates? Because that is definitely hard for a lot of voters. The reason for that is that judges don't campaign in the same way that other electoral candidates usually campaign. And there's essentially cultural reasons for that as judges. But part of the other half of it is that often judicial candidates are running unopposed, so there's not much of a reason for them to campaign because they're going to win their election unless there is a write-in candidate. There are a couple of contested races this year. The biggest one is the Supreme Court race in Minnesota is contested this year. So I've put a couple of links up here. VoteMNJudges.com, that is actually sponsored by the Bar Association. That's their educational piece on the judicial elections. They've got candidate profiles completed by the candidates themselves available on that website for both the Supreme Court candidates as well as a contested race in Ramsey County. They're also, the league also has vote411.org. That is our online voters guide where we have asked candidates to respond to a variety of questions so that voters can learn about candidates. We do have both of the Supreme Court candidates have responded to our questions. So that's another resource for voters if they're interested in learning more about the candidates. And then of course, if you're interested in learning about the incumbents who are running again, you can look up their profile on the court website. That's another resource if you're interested in learning about those candidates. And this is just a little preview of what that vote411.org/ballot looks like. You'll enter your address, you'll select your language, and then you'll click See My Races. It will show you a list of all the races that are available to you based off of your address. And then I've highlighted the one where you can see the Supreme Court seat. And that's just a preview of what it looks like. That's just the biographical information. Lower down on there is the questions that I've cut off from the preview, but there are some questions there that are answered. Some additional resources available for folks if they're looking for information on voting this year. So always go ahead and check our website, lwvmn.org. We have our Vote From Home campaign, which explains to people the process of voting from home. If you have not requested your absentee ballot yet, you need to do so as soon as possible and make a plan for returning your ballot in person by dropping it off either in person at the election office or dropping it off at a ballot box as soon as possible. Because it will take several days for it to get to you and then and to get back. So we're advising folks that if you haven't requested it yet, you need to do it now, and you need to make a plan to return it in person, just to ensure you're not encountering any postal delays or anything like that. You also, of course, can vote in person early as well, so that's another option for folks. We do recommend that as well. And we do walk through those options in our Vote in Person page. Additionally, we have a news blog that's had several updates over the last month, including the explanation of the envelopes that I was talking about earlier. We also have a blog post talking about foreign influence on our elections. A lot of folks have come to us concerned that ballot numbers will be changed or something like that, and that's actually not the national security officials are actually pretty clear, and election officials are pretty clear that the numbers themselves probably won't change. The real issue is the misinformation and disinformation that's coming from foreign entities that will confuse and cause chaos and undermine the trust in our system. So we walk people through that information. We also have had some concerns about poll watching in Minnesota. So we've explained about what laws there are relating to poll watching and challengers. And we also, just this week, filed a lawsuit based off of a private security organization that essentially was recruiting ex-military to staff outside of polling places with weapons, which is not permitted under Minnesota law for a multitude of reasons, and is a violation of the Voting Rights Act at the federal level. So we brought a lawsuit to ensure that that does not happen. So we've got an update on that. So lots of resources available. You're also welcome to call us at any time, and we'll answer questions for folks as well. Yeah. So if people have questions, I'm happy to answer those. Yes, let's go with you.
You know, my question started with the idea of volunteer opportunities, and as I'm just thinking about that question, it maybe has evolved more into wanting to know a little bit about the name of your organization and whether it's just women or why it's called the League of Women Voters, and the history of that would be interesting as well.
Yeah, so the question was why we named the League of Women Voters and our history and whether it's just for women. It is not. Our organization is open to people of any gender. I myself have been a member for 6 years. I am staff now, and I've been staff for 3 years, but before that I was just a volunteer member. Our organization grew from the suffrage movement to earn the right to vote for many women, and that's how we started, and we've simply kept the name out of respect for that. It's actually our 100th anniversary this year, as well as the 100th anniversary for the 19th Amendment, so it's been a big year and great. So we welcome members of any gender. We have several male members. I think we even have a couple of male members who are presidents of their local chapters, so yeah, we definitely welcome folk to join us. Start with you.
So I know that not every state requires ballots that have some error to be notified to that voter. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that patchwork of laws and states that do and don't notify voters of any errors?
Yeah, so the question was about notifying voters if there's an error and their ballot won't be counted, and how there's different laws in different states. And as you said, a patchwork. And that's really all election law almost is a patchwork. There is a couple of common threads, so to speak, through federal law, like the Voting Rights Act, for example, but most election law happens at the state level. A lot of states, they do not require notification of voters if their ballot has not been counted. Some states do have a verification process or a checking. So in Minnesota, for example, you can go to mnvotes.org/track to see if your ballot has been received and whether or not it's been counted. A lot of states don't have that. So for example, I have family in Texas, they don't have that option. They essentially just have to hope and pray that their ballot's going to be counted. I think, I would hope that over time more states would adopt processes like that in Minnesota to be more thoughtful about the voter, but that will require legislative change either from Congress or the state legislatures. Yes?
Yep.
Who is eligible to vote? How do you make sure that only those ballots are actually counted?
Yep, great question. So the question is, who's eligible to vote, and how do you make sure that only people who are eligible can vote? So you do that verification when people register to vote. That registration is checked by the Secretary of State's office and the local election officials, mainly the local election officials. The county auditors technically are in charge of what's called the statewide voter registration system, which is where all the information on registered voters go. That list is checked. That's part of the reason you have to give your social security number and your driver's license number, is to verify who you are, your age, etc. And on top of that, individuals who are still serving a felony conviction in Minnesota are not eligible to vote. So if they're on probation, parole, or supervised release, they're not eligible to vote in Minnesota. So the Secretary of State's office receives essentially lists of those individuals from Department of Corrections as well as the courts. So there's two different sources. Both those lists are checked against the statewide voter registration system. They also receive updates from the Social Security Administration as well as the Minnesota Department of Health on individuals who have died, to ensure that if there are any individuals who are registered who have passed away, they are put on an inactive status because dead people can't vote. There's multiple checks there on that system as well. The postcard that you receive in the mail when you register to vote, a lot of people just think that it tells them what their polling place is, but there's a secondary purpose, the primary purpose actually, which is, it's called a postal verification card. It verifies that you actually live where you say you live. And so that's in another system to make sure that only people who live within the district actually vote within that district. So lots of checks in the system to ensure that everything's safe. All right, we've got one back here that I've been putting off.
All right, well, my interest is in the mail-in voting, and there's poll watchers on the day of the election, but what about those ballots, and how is that watched?
Yeah, so the systems are set up by the local election officials on how. Oh yes, sorry, thank you. So the question is, there are challengers on Minnesota in Minnesota who are present on election day when ballots are counted, and then the question was, how about the ballots that are mailed in, the absentee ballots? How are those watched? So when individuals who check the ballot, the actual ballot processing is open to the public once voting has ceased on election day. The local election officials also are supposed to have a process to ensure that people can watch the balloting, the ballot counting on election day as well. So Hennepin County is developing a system right now. They testified at the legislature, I think just last week, that they're developing a system. It's a little bit different because they have to account for COVID restrictions. So they are trying to figure out a system where they are both open to ensure that people can watch that, but also abiding by COVID restrictions and keeping the ballot safe so nothing's tampered with by anyone. So it's a tough balance. I think you were first.
So, 2 questions. The logistics of 1.6 million absentee voters coming in, that seems like a lot. And from what I understand, it's each individual county or voting thing or whatever. How do they do that? My second question is, I don't know if you saw the breaking news last night when the FBI director came on and said that there are these bad videos that are coming from Iran and Russia, and rest assured voting's going to be okay, and don't panic and just ignore it. That's all.
Yeah. So the first question was the operations of counting 1.6 million ballots. It essentially takes an army of election judges, of volunteer and paid staff election judges, well-trained election officials, which are the city clerks or whoever they hire. So for example, in Minneapolis, they have a actual elections department with election staff specifically. There's also training from the Secretary of State's office. They provide training to all those local election officials. So the real issue is that In some states, there is more emphasis on training of those local election officials, and the elections is becoming a professionalized service. So for example, the Humphrey School actually has a election administration certificate program. So part of that is ensuring that you have really good training programs and handbooks and manuals. Those manuals and handbooks are actually drafted by the Secretary of State's office, and then local election officials use that to determine their own local practices as necessary. Those handbooks are actually open to the public. You can go on the Secretary of State's website and view them yourself if you want. The real issue is training an army of volunteers and professional staff. The second part of your question was, last night there was an announcement by the FBI and Department of Homeland Security regarding potential misinformation from allegedly Iran, Russia, some other foreign entities. My comment on that is, as I was saying earlier, the issue is not so much changing vote totals. The issue is misinformation and chaos and undermining the trust of our elections. So I think that my emphasis to folks is, when you're looking and hearing information, use trusted sources. Make sure the information is verified. Don't share information on social media or email if it's not verified by multiple, well-trusted news organizations. Listen to the information coming from your local election officials. So, your city clerk, your county elections office, et cetera, the Secretary of State's office. So it's really about ensuring that you're only listening to the trusted sources who can verify information and not getting caught up in unverified information. Yes?
On the night, we all vote, we show up at the polls on the 3rd. Then on the 4th, there's a group of people that are sitting at tables, and by that time, that's just brown envelopes. A person will grab a brown envelope, open the brown envelope, take the ballot out and through a voting machine, and it'll count it. And then they'll take the next one and they'll go, the next one. And so that's going to happen starting on the morning of the 4th, I presume. Is that, please clarify the actual mechanics of what's happening. By that time, there'll be just brown envelopes, I believe.
Yes. So the question is clarification of the actual processing of absentee ballots that come in through the mail. There is essentially the stack of brown envelopes, and what happens is on the end of election night, the local election officials are supposed to total the ballots that they have come in so far. Yes, they count those brown envelopes and add those to the election day totals, and that's what the unofficial results that get released that night. That's where that number comes from, is the combination of absentee votes that they've counted by those brown envelopes, opening them, putting them through the ballot tabulator. And they add those two together, and that becomes the unofficial total for that night.
But they don't, when do they count, when do they run the brown envelopes through the machine?
That happens at a minimum, so they can technically start 2 weeks before. The actual counting usually happens on election day or the day or two following.
They could start counting ballots right now.
They start processing. Yeah, so that means they verify the information on the witness signature.
When can they start counting?
2 weeks before. So it's kind of concurrent, because all those ballots are coming in over time. So there's multiple steps happening at the same time.
Is that information public? The results of those counting?
The counting is what's released on election night. They combine what's counted with what's happened on election day. And then that's the unofficial results released that night. And it will this year for sure, because ballots will keep coming in for the rest of the week.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think we have time for one more question.
Sure.
Apart from brown envelopes, what we really hear about that's different is how bitterly divided we are. And I wonder if the League of Women Voters or other organizations like them have have made any stabs toward trying to find ways to change that or bring people together. I heard just the other day that there were 2 candidates for governor in a state, which I can't remember, that did a common ad. They paid for it together. They said, vote for me. Each one said, vote for me, but they were trying to make a point, make a witness that we can still be civil and brotherly and kindly, and we don't have to kill each other in order to run for office. Do you, is there anything going on out there other than the churches, let's say, who are trying to unify people or find ways to change that atmosphere of the whole election process?
Yeah, so the question was about essentially partisanship and divisiveness during the election process and trying to create some sense of unity and community. That's part of what the League does. So we are nonpartisan. We have members who are Republicans and Democrats, both, including former and current elected officials from both parties, major parties. And so that's part of what we want to do, is ensure that our mission is ensuring that every eligible voter can vote if they want to vote, regardless of whatever their political affiliation is. There are, and the example that you gave, it is actually, I believe it's 2 candidates for senator for the state of Utah, or perhaps Idaho, one of those 2. And they did do an ad where they each said, vote for me, but regardless, we think it's important that you know that your votes are going to be counted and our elections are secure, and that we trust this process, and you should too. And I think that's absolutely crucial. That's, I think, a big part is people just are afraid of, they're concerned about the system. They're concerned about the absentee mail voting process. They're concerned about the Postal Service and whether that will affect people's ability to return their ballots. They're concerned about a lot of parts of the process. And by emphasizing what we're doing here today, informing people of all the steps of the process to keep the system secure and accurate, really helps. At the national level, there is an organization of 40 bipartisan current and former elected officials. I believe it's called the National Election Integrity Committee. I could be wrong on that name, but they are working together on essentially a very similar concept that you're doing, that you were talking about, which is ensuring that there is a bipartisan consensus and understanding of our elections are secure and safe and trustworthy. And there's multiple national organizations that are working on this issue. They aren't quite talking about it yet because their plans are still in the making, essentially. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nick, on behalf of the Rotary Club of Edina, I'd like to thank you very much for coming to speak with us today. A very timely topic, and I think by all the questions you could see how interested we all are in what you had to say. Rotary is a network of 1.2 million problem solvers who unite to take action to make the world a better place. In honor of your presentation, we'll make a donation to the Sheridan Story, which is an organization focused on providing weekend and other food gap relief to 10,000 children in the Twin Cities. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, looking ahead, we have the schedule right there. One thing I want to point out is on November 4th, Vocational Happy Hour, it's our member Nick Van Beek will be speaking. And next week's speaker is Mark Ritchie, President of Global Minnesota. That should be interesting. So thank you everybody for joining us today, both live and on Zoom. I want to leave you with a quote. Talk is cheap, voting is free, take it to the polls. Annette Avery. Thank you everybody, meeting adjourned.